All right. We are now recording. So, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Doctor.
Once again, here we are at the crack of dawn, learning Java. I am pleased to see that attendance is actually still pretty good. Normally, by this point in the semester, it's dropped off somewhat. Here we are. So, we have one, I guess I'll just wait a moment to get settled. Okay. So, there is one point that has been made official course policy, and that's the time and date at which test number 1 is occurring. So, basically, test number 1 is next week on Friday during our regularly scheduled class. It won't take the entire 3 hours. It's designed to be a 2-hour test, so the last hour is, I guess we'll have an impromptu LAN party or something. We'll probably just all go home.
So we only get 2 hours out of 3 hours to write it?
Well, other sections are being forced to write the class in a 2-hour section, so 2 hours is the amount of time the test has been designed for, and in order for our class not to have an unfair advantage, which would be quite substantial going from a 2 to 3 hour writing time, yes, it will be a 2-hour test, despite the fact it's in a 3-hour time slot. So, bring a photo ID, please. Your student card is acceptable photo ID. If you forget that, I will request to see some other form of photo ID for the purposes of identity verification. Whatever you need to write it means pencils or pens or erasers and that sort of thing. If you need your phone to write the test, I'm afraid you won't be allowed to use it. So, having a cell phone on you during a test is an actual capital crime. You will be executed on the spot. No, I will simply take your test from you and rip it up in front of you if you have your test out during, or if you have your phone out during the test, not if you have your test out during the phone. Although, you know, that might also be the way people think about life these days. I have class during my phone time. But anyway.
You too?
Yeah. So, the test is a written paper test. No aids are permitted aside from a reference sheet which is attached to the back page, which includes a list of common methods used in the objects that we are used to, like the scanner object and the the JavaFX graphic context object that we've been using to draw things. So that is the rough summary of information. Since everybody is always interested in test coverage, I will reveal to you right now, right here, of the material this week. Constructors, that is on the test. Overloading, that is on the test. Association, that is not on the test. Neither is the final topic for this week, static variables and methods. That is also not on the test. So, test coverage is everything we've done in class up to this week, including topics 1 and 2 from this week's guide document. Any questions about coverage? That should hopefully be explicit and clear. Yes?
About JavaFX, do we need to remember anything from the JavaFX template or?
You should certainly remember how it works and how to use it. You do not need to memorize the method, the list of methods or the method usage, as there is an attached guide on the test to provide that information, but you should certainly know how to use JavaFX, and if you did assignment 1, you should be doing reasonable for that. Question?
Are we gonna have assignment 1 and 2 marked before the test?
Yes, definitely. Assignment 1 is going to be, the grades are going to be handed back today. And assignment 2 is like this time next week, certainly, if not earlier.
Okay.
I am not making any guarantees about getting assignment 3 back to you in time for the test, as it's it's going to be handed to me shortly before we write the test. In fact, I think valid submissions can still be made while this test is occurring for assignment 3, so I'm not going to have assignment 3 back to you for the test, but the other 2, absolutely. Yeah, I know the assignment 1 grades have taken a little bit more time. I took a little bit of time to write a bash script to automate some of the process, which took a little bit of investment time at the beginning of the semester, but now I should be able to crack things off with even greater ferocity, for the duration of the semester, now that I have my little robot minion set up. So, yeah, it's pretty nice. It does the whole thing in command line, and it basically at no point actually opens IntelliJ, which speeds things up tremendously. So, bash scripting is amazing, and everybody should learn how to do it because it's amazing. But anyway, so, any further questions about the test? If you are looking for practice material for the test, if you go to your modules, I have published the category on test 1, which is week 5. You will note that this includes a sample test given here. There you have it. You should know that in the past, this document has been reasonably representative of the form and duration of the test, although of course the actual questions will be different. So if you're interested in a document that is, good practice in terms of giving you an estimate of how long the test is, what the sort of topics covered will be, all of that sort of thing, you should consult this document. It should give you a reasonably robust understanding of what the test is going to be like. Does that make sense? Good. Any other questions? Everybody's going to get 100% then?
Yep.
Perfect.
Can do that.
So, oh man. All right. Give me 1 moment. Make that. Let's see here. Assignment 3, I haven't put it up yet.
Nope,
I need to get it
not
into
yet.
my email. Give me a moment, please. Sorry about this. Talk amongst yourselves. All right, we've got it up. So, assignment 3, and this is very important, you have 2 weeks to complete rather than 1. The reason being, we have a test next week, and we expect that part of your workload that you're allocating to this class will be studying for the test. Therefore, we're not expecting this to be due at the same time as the test, basically. But I will nevertheless introduce the assignment now. Please be aware, 2 weeks for submission.
Excuse me.
Okay? So, the primary subject of this assignment is a software principle we will be discussing at length this week, which is association. So this is the association assignment. It also covers constructors and overloading, other important topics that we will be covering this week. It's another JavaFX assignment. Hold your cheers. The idea with this one is that you create a JavaFX interface, but instead of having all of your geometric figures drawn in the screen in one big interaction, the point with this one is that each of these figures drawn on screen will have a corresponding object and therefore a corresponding class definition. Certain elements are randomized, where you'll have to draw, you'll have to pick, use random number libraries to generate some of the information, such as, for example, the numbers appearing inside of the robots. I know these don't look particularly convincing as robots, but there's only so much you can do with JavaFX. If you wish to make more convincing looking robots, that is certainly that is certainly your prerogative as in the course of the assignment. So the robot, each of these set of 3 robots is its own class. Each robot within these teams is its own class. You have one separately drawn robot, which is the referee. The robot, and the title is Robot Olympics. The Robot Olympics has 4 objects which form the model. You remember, or 4 classes which form the model. Let's say objects. There's a UML diagram. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 classes altogether, right? I did warn you that the number of classes would continue to increase as this course goes on, right? So, a team has a name and consists of 3 players of the same color, each with a random number integer representing their win percentage. A player has a head and 2 wheels. The referee is a single player. The ref is not part of a team, but is drawn from one of them, selected randomly at runtime, and its color and title show that. So you can pick whatever color you want. In the past, people have generated random colors for these. Although the referee is not on a team, it should share its color scheme with one of the teams. This is an example of what your output might look like. It does not need to look exactly like this. In fact, given the wide variety of different Arkanoid screens I've been grading, I'm expecting a certain degree of diversity in the appearances of these responses. If people's work looks too similar, I'm having perhaps people are cheating type thoughts. If you do it on your own, yours should look very different from everybody else's. So, let's discuss the structure of this code. The UML class diagram, this is a partial diagram, as it does not include the view. All 4 of these classes are all model classes, right? And the view class, which you would call Robot Olympics or something like that, it will associate itself with 3 teams and 1 individual player, which is the referee. Each team has 3 players. Each player has 1 head and 2 wheels. If you want to add additional subclasses for additional things you draw on the robots, that's entirely up to you. I would encourage you to do so. It makes it a little bit more nice looking. If you have, in the past, I've had, people put like a great big red eye in the middle of that weird head thing, which kind of makes them look a little HAL 9000-esque. Oh my gosh, a room full of Zoomers might not get that reference. So you guys know what HAL 9000 is?
Space Odyssey.
Yeah, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Good. If you haven't seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, it is a masterpiece of cinematography. I absolutely encourage everyone to view it, but judge it not in the context of modern special effects, but what was possible at the time. So, head is an oval, rectangle, or other head-like shape with a neck attached. Its X and Y location is determined at its top left corner, and the neck is drawn relative to that. Basically, I'm going to allow you a certain degree of flexibility with how you actually want to set these classes up and draw your robot. If you want to draw a cooler looking robot than the robots depicted here, I'm absolutely for that. Just make sure that whatever your robot looks like, its subcomponents are reasonably divided into classes which are instantiated. You'll need at least 2. If your player is not creating at least 2 objects, it's like, well, at that point you're solving a simpler problem than what the assignment was asking. So I will have to deduct some marks for your solution. Right? Making sense so far? Any questions so far? Good. So, wheel is pretty basic. It's just 1 oval or rectangle. In this version, it's an oval. The player is a body shape with its wind percentage displayed within it. Your players should not look like the picture, make them look unique. The players in each team have an empty string as a title, but the referee has a non-empty string as a title as shown. The players' X and Y locations determine the top left corner of the body shape, etc., etc. The first constructor creates a regular player with an empty title and a random win percentage. The second constructor is used to create the referee. So if you'll notice, we haven't talked about constructors yet, but here you have 2 constructors attached to the player object. This means that the player can be constructed in one of 2 different ways. One of these corresponds to creating a player as part of a team. The other constructor is used when you're creating the referee. This is known as overloading. It's a topic that we'll be covering in class, so don't worry about it too much yet. But by the end of this class, you should have a reasonable understanding of what it means to overload a method. Yes, yes, yes. Basically, the player object will call the draw method of the subobject. You'll notice that all four of these objects, or all four of these classes, contain a draw method. The purpose of the draw method is to draw the thing described by the class, right? So, if we draw a team, we would be drawing each of the individual player objects one at a time in their correct positions. To draw a player means to draw that colored body portion and to draw the three actually sub-objects, because we will get instantiated twice. So, in the end, the code is going to look like this cascading series of draw methods calling each other until you eventually reach the bottom of the stack, where no further draw methods are called. If you have written your code correctly, the view class will require only 6 lines of code. Well, let's make that 8 lines of code.
So not
Six
more
if you're cramming stuff together.
not more than 10.
Certainly not more than 10. With this assignment, you do not have to write a user interaction. There's no, no scanner, no taking input from the user. You're just simply you just run the program, it draws your figures, there's a certain degree of
So it
randomization.
will have a total of 5 classes, including these 4 in the 5th one, the Robot Olympics.
Yes. Yep, a total of 5 classes. The 5th is the view class, which is not depicted in this diagram, but it's described thoroughly in this document. Yeah. You had a question? No? Okay. Just comments? Yeah. So, good. It's actually called 3 teams, but if you want to call it Robot Olympics, that's fine too. So, implementation and documentation. So, you will find in this class that assignments come in one of 2 forms. Either you are given no UML diagram and you must create one, or you are given a UML diagram and you must write the code from that diagram. So in the case of assignment 3, no UML diagram is required as part of your submission, right? It's been given to you, you don't have to give it back to me, it will look the same as when I gave it to you, hopefully, right?
So how do we submit the UML diagram for the assignment 2? Just in PNG form?
Well, you will just have to add the .txt file extension the same way you do everything else.
Oh.
Yeah. It doesn't actually modify the underlying binary code to do that. For example, I'll just give you a quick example. Let's say, for example, alright. Kitten image. There we go. Let's say we have this image of a cute kitten. Save image. Download AVIF. Well, I wanted a PNG actually. Can I have a PNG, please? Oh, thank you.
Can't just save it.
You just search PNG, kit image PNG.
I thought you had to go in the settings, but that's
Yes,
Alright.
true.
alright. So that's JPEG.
Uh-huh.
That's fine. That'll.
Save it.
I just
Save
have
as.
an aversion.
Just save it as PNG.
Change the
not
save as
PNG.
type at the bottom
Save a type.
Like
there? No? Okay.
I
But
don't.
it says it's a
I don't know if
PNG
that actually
image.
works because like, does it recode?
No.
Does it recode a JPEG to be a PNG when you just change the file extension? I somehow doubt it. But anyway, this is a lie.
Yes.
PNG tree, PNG image, and it's a JPEG. What a dirty, filthy lie. Because it's a JPEG, that means that it will have the transparency layer as part of the image itself, because JPEGs don't support transparency layers.
Yes.
What rude... It will still demonstrate my point, though. Kitten. There we go.
No,
Ah. It's like, there's so much untruth in the world, you know? So anyway, there's your kitten image. You can see that, like, yes, the transparency layer is part of the image. If you're doing this on a cursed Windows operating system, you'll have to go to View File Name Extensions for this to work. Next, you right-click, rename, add the .txt file extension.
Yes.
It warns you that the file extension might make the file unusable. This is pointless and idiotic propaganda on the part of Windows. It does not affect the contents of the file. There you go. Your image file is now a .txt document, which means
It's associated with WordPad now, so it's all screwed up.
well, it's not actually like, again, the binary
Well,
content
it's
of the
just
data
kind of
has not
displayed
changed.
binary.
All it has done is change the associated programs, which are by default
Decoding it.
open thing. Like, if you wanted to, right-click, open with, choose another app, more apps, paint, okay, there you go, right? All you have to do is select the right program to open the file, and the file is not modified in any way.
But it's
right?
a text file. You're supposed to use Notepad to open it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a Windows user.
Yeah, no, it's this type of this like this is one of these sorts of things that like Linux people really find annoying about. Like, Microsoft is annoying, Windows is annoying in many subtle ways. This is one of
That was
them.
Linux.
Yeah, well, Linux has its own set, but at least the basic layer respects the user of the computer, you know?
But file name extensions are case sensitive. That's
So,
one .jpg with .jpg all lowercase should not be a different file than one .jpg with jpg all uppercase.
I
They should
mean,
be, computers should be smart enough to know that that's the same file. Mm-hmm.
okay, but in Linux, like, you are absolutely, like, you are respected to the point where you can literally delete your entire operating system in like 9 characters, you know? Like, it respects you as a user. It's like, if you want to do something stupid, I will do that for
You
you.
can delete
Right.
with wildcards in Windows too.
Yeah, but not from any working directory. So, anyway, the point is, if you slap the .txt file extension on this thing, it gets it past the filter on the submission system on my Canvas. So you can
That's the
submit.
point of that.
Yeah, you can submit this through my Canvas if you don't rename it as .txt, then I won't be able to get it or read it. Assignment 2 is still in the running. Its final due date is today, but you have the 3 days of leeway after that. Am I getting that correct?
I think so, on 10 days total, right? For all the assignments?
Well, you don't have 10 days for all of the assignments because you only have 10 late days.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Oh, right.
In
Because it's
total.
7 days plus 3 days. That's also 10, so that's where my brain went. But yeah. So if you want to submit your UML diagram for assignment 2, I'm reasonably flexible about how you go about doing that. I would prefer just a regular image file and not the like draw.io file, which is actually, I have to open it with like the program, and it's just a pain. And if everyone submits a PNG file, then I can script it in and it'll open it for me, which is nice. But I'm not sure I can technically require PNG files, so I'll just have to deal with whatever you do. But you can make my life a little bit easier by being consistent. But anyway, so you can do that with pretty much any file type. So the question you may be asking yourself is, well, why are we required to submit things as .txt in the first place, if this is the case?
You told us that
Yeah.
the Turnitin doesn't take the other files.
Precisely. In order for me to use Turnitin to verify assignment integrity, it basically has to be .txt files. This is a policy which has been rolled out across the entire course. So if you have this funny notion that it's okay to cheat with people in other sections because I'm not going to see both of your submissions, Turnitin is. So don't think that that's the way around it. So yeah, that's how you submit images and other associated things. Any questions? Technically, you can also submit zip files this way, but don't. If you do, I will find you. I have your name and I have your number. I don't know where you live, but I could probably look it up. Ha 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 ha. But seriously though, I could. But that would be a breach of ethics, so I'm not going to do that. Also, you guys, like, any one of you is just not worth my time in that way, But that's okay. So anyway, that's how you submit things. That's like, sometimes students feel that like a particular professor has an animus against them. And as a professor, let me just say, it's usually not the case, because professors just can't be bothered having that kind of like it takes energy to have animus against a student, and normally you just don't have that kind of energy available. So anyway,
Professor, somebody has their hand raised.
oh, I'm sorry.
Are we submitting a Java file, but it's a TXT?
Yes, in all cases, that process I showed with the JPEG, that is the expected way for you to submit all of your files. So, literally, if you write, public class, head, the file containing that should be head.java, right? Then you slap .txt on that and you submit it. I only want the source code files, not all of the IntelliJ project files. Yeah. I'm not actually using IntelliJ to compile your work. I'm using a separate command line JVM that's been linked to the JavaFX libraries. So it works quite well, actually. I'm quite pleased with it. But if I may say so, many of you have been renaming your Java files before submitting them to something like, student name .java. Now I understand that on the first assignment you were only submitting one file anyways, which, if you're only submitting one file, it's tempting to put your name on it. We have a whole submission system. There is no way for me to confuse your file with anybody else's file. Even when I'm doing bulk downloads, your name gets added to the front of all of the files you submit. So automatically that happens. You do not have to do this. if you do this, it means that your work doesn't actually compile, right? Because in Java, the file name is expected to be the class name. So if you modify the name of the file, that defeats your ability to have your work compiled. Basically, I wrote my script such that it fixes that for you and then tells me that you made that mistake so I can give you a penalty for it. So, yeah, it's quite a handy little script. Another
Yeah.
thing that it fixes is like some people will submit something like head.txt and like take the Java out because, you know, to be fair, you probably haven't worked with multiple file extensions in the past. It also fixes that automatically. I don't do a deduction for that one though, because, you know, whatever. Another one, while we're on the subject, if you are submitting things like head-1.java, that also messes up compilation, so don't include the -1, don't include the dash copy, alright? Keep your file names clean and pristine and in such a manner that they can just be compiled, please. Alright? Anyway, there's me being grumpy about file names for the internet. Any questions about the assignment? Alright, so let's move right along. No more kittens, no more Outlook. If you have not yet launched IntelliJ, please do so now. So, let me see if I can do something about the lights. Yeah, I've got like, the middle button isn't working. Is it? Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. So, we continue our discussion of object-oriented programming. If you all recall, at the end of last week, I told you that you really only had about half the story on object-oriented so far. There were still a couple of really important pieces missing. So, one of those very important pieces is the constructor. So, if we consider our code from the code that we were working on, our in-class examples from last week, which I hope everybody brought with them today, you'll notice that it was kind of a pain to work with the objects that we created. You create the object in your main class. You then have to manually modify a bunch of attributes. If you have made those attributes private, you then have to go through the methods. It's all very verbose and not very compact, just kind of looking a bit kludgy, you know, not very nice to work with. And although Java is a verbose language, it turns out it's not that verbose. You guys know what I mean by the word verbose?
Wordy.
Wordy, yes. I will look up the definition. If I'm ever at any point using a word that's sort of outside the standard lexicon, let me know. So, verbose, using or expressed in more words than are needed.
Ooh.
Now, the word verbose is actually something, like it has a specific technical meaning as applied to computer programming and computer programs, aside from the standard English definition, what it, you'll see this mostly in command line programs, but they will often have a verbose mode, -V as an option. What that will do is print out a great quantity more detail about the internal operation of that program, as opposed to just no output or like a summary output, which is the default mode most of the time. A good example is the Linux command cp, which is copy. You copy one file to another. If you copy, file .txt to file2.txt, you make a duplicate copy called file2.txt. If you include the -v option, that's verbose mode, and it will say, it will actually enumerate all of the files that it's copying as it's copying them, and that can be quite a number of files depending on what kind of operation you're doing, copying entire folders, for example. But I digress. That's verbose. So verbose mode means something in computer science. You should learn the standard terms. So anyway, so Java, as with all object-oriented languages, supports a construction, a language construct, known as the constructor. The constructor is a special method. The purpose of it, it gets called once when the object is created and at no other times. The constructor has a twin called the destructor, which we are not really going to talk about, but if it's necessary for you to have something happen when an object is destroyed, the destructor can help in that respect as well. So normally we don't worry too much about destructors in Java because this is not C or C++. Java has a, do you all know what garbage collection is?
No.
No?
When it cleans up unused variables and frees up memory that you're not using?
Yeah, basically. Most modern programming languages have some form of garbage collection. So, back in the old days, when you program in something like C, or possibly C++, I'm not sure if C++ does garbage collection. In C, if you allocate memory and you forget to deallocate it, depending on the manner you do that, the allocation of that memory survives the termination of the program. So you can allocate, process A can allocate itself memory, never release it, and that memory is just permanently locked off for a program that's now closed, right? If this happens sufficiently frequently, you run out of, what actually happens is you run out of memory, so your operating system starts caching with the hard drive, which slows your computer down tremendously. So
That's actually worse than just a crash.
A straight up crash would be less time, right? So this is called memory leaking. So because you're kind of constantly, think of your memory as a bucket with little holes in it. You're constantly leaking a little bit of memory into your operating system if you forget to free your pointers and that sort of thing.
And that doesn't get freed up until computer reboot.
Precisely. The only way to really clear it completely is to reboot the computer. Because even if you enter hibernation mode, the way hibernation mode works, I don't know if you knew this, hibernation mode, what it actually is, it takes the contents of your RAM, writes it to your hard disk, turns itself off, then when it reboots, it restores its RAM from the hard disk again, and that's how a hibernation cycle works on a computer. So that'll keep any memory leaks. So basically, C is a language that many people used, and not everybody who used it was sufficiently fastidious to free all of their memory when they were using it. So, the people who are particularly at fault for this are, of course, my old nemesis, Bill Gates, who I don't think actually did a great deal of the programming on Windows, but he certainly did some of it. Anyway, Windows machines are notorious for this. They hide it now with the fact that computers just have a lot more RAM available, right? But basically, this is deep operating system stuff that has not appreciably changed since Windows 98, or even 3.1. It's amazing how much legacy code is still being run. So basically, Windows, if you leave it running long enough and you're doing stuff with it, it'll eventually just get really, really, really slow, and the only way to fix that is to reboot it. That's the origin of this problem. Now, that's all fine. That's a problem with the C programming language and related programming languages. Java came along with an innovation at the time, or maybe it just popularized it, but Java was one of the first big languages to do this. A process known as garbage collection. So what garbage collection is, it's a subroutine inside of the Java virtual machine that periodically checks to make sure that all of the allocated memory still has things pointing to it inside the variables of the program. So if you create an object, right? If you create an object and you create a reference to that object, and then let's say you create a new object and you redirect that reference to the new object, thus deleting the first reference, this object's now dead. There is literally no way to return to it in Java. It's done. It is garbage. The purpose of the garbage collector is to run through all of the allocated memory and check to see each one has an arrow pointing to it. If there's no reference to that sector of memory, it is considered dead and garbage and is therefore deleted. The resources are freed and returned to the operating system. This process means that Java does not leak memory the same way that C does, which is a good thing. C doesn't leak memory if you use it properly, but
It's hard.
you basically have to be a Linux guy to do that. And who's a Linux guy, right? Linux, they were sufficiently good programmers that they don't have these types of problems. So this is the reason that we don't have to be extremely careful about destroying objects in Java which we have created, because we have the garbage collection routine running along behind us, picking up our scraps and returning them to the operating system. So we don't really have to worry about destructors in Java unless we need them to do something specific. Constructing is way, way more important in Java. So, incidentally, does anybody care to guess what price we pay to get garbage collection? Because it's always a trade-off. What are we giving up? Yes?
It takes up processing speed.
Precisely. The garbage collector itself is program overhead, right? Because we're running inside of the Java virtual machine, there's a certain amount of overhead anyways, because it's a compiled/interpreted, but ultimately interpreted language. So you have a certain amount of overhead anyways. But the garbage collector itself is an overhead to that whole process. It makes the JVM run slower than a corresponding C program would. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. So the constructor is called once at the beginning of the program. it has important implications for encapsulation. Because the constructor is a method of the class, it has access to all private variables, right? Using the constructor, it is possible to declare an object with certain properties and withhold from the user the ability to modify those properties later. This is essentially, this is something like setting a constant, right? It's not actually using like the constant keyword. These are, you know, to put it in what is it, Wonderbird terms, it's a variable constant. It behaves like a constant because it's not easy to modify it, but inside of the object itself, it is possible to modify the private value. So it's variable from one perspective and constant from another. But anyway,
It's sort of read-only.
so the form that a constructor takes is very particular. There's a different syntax for a constructor. Public, circle for, list of arguments. Now, remembering our methods from last class, what is missing?
Voids,
Getters and setters?
Those would be separate methods. You two answer a lot. Let me see if anybody else is interested in venturing. Okay.
the type,
Correct.
the void or int or whatever.
Precisely. Public, circle for. Right? Nothing. No return type has been indicated. Another observation that we might make about this. Is there anything particular about the name of this method?
C capital, C.
It's the same as the
Class
public
name?
class.
Precisely so. The name of the method is identical to the name of the class. Right? Those two factors make this a constructor.
That's how Java.
Right? Now, it's not that the constructor doesn't return anything, otherwise its type would be void, right? The thing that the constructor returns, and please write this down if you're writing things down, it returns a reference to the newly created object. That is the return value of the constructor.
That's why it's circle.
So the reason that we don't have a return type is that the name of the method is identical with its return type. It's the same thing. So basically, if Java was being even more verbose than Java normally is, the constructor would be public circle for, right? The return type would be circle for. The name of the method is circle for. They've basically just contracted it. Question?
So we're not actually returning anything.
Well, actually we are. Let's consider the manner in which this, the constructor is used to create the object. Although we are using the new keyword, you will notice we are assigning the return value to a newly created circle for variable. Right? This is a reference variable. It refers to a circle for object. This is the constructor invocation. It returns something which we are assigning to the variable. The thing it is returning is, everybody together, a reference to the newly created object. Does that make sense? A little bit? Just a smidgen?
I get it, the mechanics behind it are confusing me, but
Well, this is Java.
It's just something Java does and we don't have to declare. We don't have to declare a return.
Kind of similar
Yeah.
to what we did with the circle thing. Once we did a circle example,
Mhm.
kind of get it.
Well, this is actually the same class, but with more stuff.
Yeah, more
Right.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so this is like,
Is it just, it's returning a pointer, it's not actually creating an object.
in Java, we prefer to call them reference variables, not pointers. Pointers are C. Pointers are bad. Reference variables are good. That's the marketing copy anyway. Yeah. No, yeah. Basically, reference variables are a way of having typed pointers that are cleaned up after you. Like, if that makes sense. Like you can do, pointers are typed in C, but then they also aren't. You know, like all pointers are all exactly the same size. So typing a pointer really just tells you how much memory it's pointing to. It doesn't tell you anything about the pointer itself, right? That's why you can easily cast between void pointers and char pointers and int pointers and all of that kind of stuff, right? The pointer itself always occupies the same amount of memory because it is a memory reference, right? So, you know, typing is kind of a thing. Like typing is very, very simple in a language like C. Like all typing tells you is how much memory the thing occupies for the purpose of dereferencing that memory. Here, this is doing a bit more legwork, right? It's a reference to an object. Objects have methods. Objects have subroutines. You know, there's a lot more going on here under the hood than there is in a simple language like C. So it is technically incorrect to call this a pointer, because it's not just a pointer, it's doing other things too, but it's a pointer. It points to the object. Like if you take the concept of pointing to memory and say point to this other ephemeral thing that Java invented, it's a pointer. But yeah, is that kind of making sense? Okay, cool. I'm not supposed to say the word pointer in class. People get upset. That's okay. So, anyway. So let's consider this list of arguments. We can design a constructor to take a list of arguments the same way that we do that with a regular method. We then use those arguments within the context of the constructor to set the values of instance or static variables. Or modify static variables more than set them, but you know, it is what it is. So, we take, for example, a double radius, a double x, and a double y. We assign this dot radius to radius, this dot x to x, and this dot y to y. Now, I believe we talked about this last time in class. Would anybody care to remind the class what the purpose of this keyword is? It's very difficult to grammar your way around that sentence. Yes?
It's a reference to the object itself.
It's a reference to the object itself, as opposed to, what's this?
The argument given to the function.
Sure. So, arguments function as local variables, right? So this radius x and y, these are local to the constructor. Once the constructor is done, they are done as well. If I were to say, radius is equal to radius without this, right? Yes?
Can you just change the argument names?
You could, yes. As you correctly observe, the problem here is that we have a namespace conflict between the argument names and the names of the instance variables. In a language like Python, you would often solve this issue by putting something a little extra on the end of the argument name, like radius 0 or something, right? But this is Java, and we like things to read in Java, and this is the way Java likes to have itself dealt with, although you can deal with it other ways. So, yes. Basically, if I said radius is equal to radius, I am reassigning a local variable to itself. IntelliJ will actually give you like a little squiggly underline if you attempt to do this, because it's a useless statement. You might as well be saying, I'm assigning 1 to 1, right? I'm assigning x to x. It doesn't make sense. So what you need to do is you need to break this out of its local context and refer it back to the object's whole namespace, not just that particular method, right? We need to basically break it out of being local and create from it it's not global, but it's global to the class, right? An instance variable. The way that we do this is by adding a reference to the object itself. So this keyword, what this means, it's always a reference to whichever object is currently having its method executed, right? This is a self-reference, but it references it at the level of instance variables, not at the local level. So, if you say this dot radius, what you are saying is, I want this one, not that one. Is this making a certain degree of sense?
Yeah.
Good. It's an important point, it's a common error. So, once we have set up a constructor to take arguments, when we call the constructor, we can provide those arguments. Is this making sense? We have already been using constructors which take arguments so far. If you recall the scanner class, what is the argument that we provide to the scanner? If anybody else can get it. Remember our line, right? Just go over the line in your head. Scanner input is equal to new scanner. What goes in there? System.in. That's right. So system.in is a it's a definition provided in the Java utility library, right? It's a reference to the standard input stream. System.in is a reference to the standard input stream. It is absolutely possible to write a scanner for any of the standard streams. Those, once again, are standard output, standard input, and standard error. So if, for example, you wanted Java to scan not your keyboard inputs, but its own print statements, then you could write a scanner that would scan standard out instead of standard in. I don't know why you would do that. Perhaps it would be useful for some purpose, but it's possible, right? That's an argument. So, any questions about constructors so far? Sorry, I apologize to you three over here because just the way the room is oriented, like my standard scan doesn't include you guys, so if you have your hands up and I'm not noticing you, just like throw a pen at me or something, and I'll answer your questions, okay? You in particular, because you're like most far over with respect to like my field of view. Question?
So, is it bad practice to call a method in the constructor? Like
Absolutely not.
No?
No. It can be very good practice. So, let me give you a scenario. Let's say we wanted to put a little bit of protection on radius. For example, does it make sense for radius to be less than 0? No. Negative radius doesn't make any sense. So, perhaps we want to build in protection against radius going below 0. Perhaps we want to substitute 0 itself or some very small number instead of a negative value that might be input, right? The constructor may also receive bad inputs, right, from somebody using it. So, the protection that we put on the radius instance variable by making it private and requiring people to use the method, right, that will encode that if statement, right? Set radius will have if radius is greater than or equal to 0, then, you know, this dot radius equals radius, else this dot radius is equal to 0, right? That's the code. You have one of two options, right? You either take that code block and copy paste it here if you want that same protection. That's the bad one. Or you call the existing method here. That's the good one, right? Because in all cases in Java, we wish to remove from our minds, we want to delete from our memory systems the idea that it's a good idea to copy and paste code, our own code, to different parts of our own code. We want to avoid that as much as possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable. It is what it is. But if you have built a protection in here, and later you want to fix the bug, right? You make a mistake and you need to fix it. Would you rather be fixing that in one place or two? Right? Obviously. Would you rather want to fix that in one place or 20? Right? So yes, you are absolutely encouraged to use your methods from inside of your constructor, especially if they are encoding protection, right? You don't want to have to write that out multiple times. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're certainly allowed to do it syntactically, right? From Java's perspective, these are general program statements. You can do whatever you want with them. This is just a code block, right? If you want to loop from 1 to infinity in here, you can do so if you want. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other question? Good. So, talked about that. Yes. Yes. Advantages of using a constructor. It makes the code more compact, particularly on the side of the class which is declaring the object. You don't have to use set methods to configure each object. You do that once inside the constructor, and then it's used everywhere. This complements encapsulation. You can set up your class so that the programmer sets initial values for private variables that are then fixed for the life of the object. So, for example, let's imagine that this Circle 4 class lacked a definition for set radius. There is no set radius available, right? Set radius, or the radius instance variable is private, right? So, when we call the constructor, argument 1 being the radius is set to 1. Is there any way to modify it from outside of the object? We don't have a set radius method. We have set the radius in the constructor. Can it be changed from outside of the method?
No, that's the point of having the,
Well, this is considered inside of the object.
So I don't think so. I think you need to get a setter.
That's correct. It cannot be changed.
so it's a read only.
It makes it read only. Yeah. Well, you
Ish.
can't read it from outside either. But since you've got a get method, you can read it through the get method. But otherwise, that thing cannot be modified in Java, right? That's an important point to get because there's often a test question on this particular point. So without a constructor, you either have to provide set methods, which means values can be changed after time of creation, or hard code the initial values. So, and hard coding values is bad. We do not hard code values. That's bad. Don't do it. I mean, you can do it for like assignment 3. You will be hard coding some values, yes, but as a general principle, try to avoid hard coding values wherever possible. So, yes.
Is assignment 2 hard coded variables or variables?
Oh, which one is assignment 2 again?
Vending
Vending
machine.
The
machine.
vending machine.
Oh,
Like for the
not in the vending machine class, like the actual vending machine class.
no in the okay.
Yeah.
Review.
In the view, when you create the vending machine, you create it with like the break room class should tell the vending machines what they contain.
Yeah.
Right? Because you are to create 2 vending machines. The vending machine definition must be flexible enough to have 2 different machines with 2 different products in it. That means you cannot, inside of the vending machine class itself, say this machine is Coke and that machine is Pepsi,
Yeah.
right? Because
That's
it's
valid.
a definition for a machine, and it is strictly incorrect to have variables that say like product 1 Coke, product 2 Pepsi inside of the same class. That is an error. That means that you haven't understood what it means to instantiate an object, right? Yes.
Can I set my vending machine to empty if I wanted to?
Sure. Yeah.
Like
I
as-
don't know
as
how
the
much does
default?
empty cost.
Nothing.
Well, yeah.
So like for example, the variable like the number of products should be is that hard coded in the view?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard coded in the view. Yeah. So whether a vending machine contains Coke or Pepsi, right? One will contain Coke, the other contains Pepsi. The view creates the vending machine objects. It then sets the name and the price and all of these internal variables for each machine, right? The machines do not come pre-baked with the products they contain.
The products can be any though, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be Coke or Pepsi.
No.
Yeah, I'm just pulling examples.
Yeah, I thought I missed a line on the PDF. I was like,
No. No, I'm just,
Quoting.
it's easier than saying product 1 and product 2.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there an issue if I didn't have to use a setter?
Well, it means that you made your variables public.
Well, my variables are private, but the getter is public.
Sorry, the which is public?
My variables are private, but the getter is public.
Oh yeah, well, if the variables are private and the getter is public, how do you get information into the class? How do you get it into the object in the first place?
In the view,
Yeah, how does the view set the name of the product to Coke?
I hard coded it. Is that a no-no?
That's a no-no.
Okay.
Give yourself a setter, my friend.
Okay.
That is the purpose of the setter. Yeah. Does this make sense? I feel like we are actually learning, you know? I think we're getting somewhere. So basically, the problem that the constructor is solving, right? It is sometimes useful to set values at the beginning and at no other point. You initialize with particular values, but after that you don't want them changed. That is what encapsulation using a constructor is for. Making sense? Shall we take a look at an example? Yes, please.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Can you, will we like do an actual example in the class? It will make it more clear.
Yes, of course. I do examples. We do
Yeah.
examples. This is a class with examples.
Examples are better than theory.
Disagree. If you don't have the theory, you can't understand what's going on in the example.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. The idea with this class is not that I just put a bunch of code examples on the board and you memorize them without understanding how they work. In order to be a Java programmer and, you know, to be able to put Java on your resume without lying, you need to understand how Java actually works. So that's what the theory is for.
Yep.
You know, by the way, if anybody was thinking about putting Python on their resume, having done like fundamentals as your only Python exposure, I would consider you to be like you're definitely bending the truth.
That's hubris.
It's hubris, yes. I'm not gonna call you liars if you do it.
Not technically.
Not technically, but anybody who actually knows Python, and trust me, some people really friggin' know Python. Like, I know I like kind of kick it around, call it snake language, but like at its high levels, like a good Python programmer is an extremely powerful programmer, right? Just like any language, it really, like, at a certain point, it really doesn't matter what language you're using anymore. You learn enough about that language, you can do anything with it, right? But anyway, some people sometimes set themselves ridiculous challenges, you know, doing things in languages that are completely unsuited. But anyway, so, make a Java project. Create for yourself 2 classes. I will call this one main. I will give it a main method. Create a second class. Let's call it fruit. There we go. I will side by side these. Fruit will be a class that is being instantiated by main, basically the same way as we were doing last week. So, fruit will have a couple of different properties. Name, string color, Canadian spelling please, and I don't know, double weight. Right? All of these will be properties of fruit. So far so good?
Yes.
Good. Maybe a Boolean is cluster, in case it's a cluster fruit. Does anybody know what a cluster fruit is?
Raspberry?
Yes. They're also called aggregate fruits. Raspberries, blackberries, I think bananas might count as well, actually, as cluster fruits. But anyway,
I don't count bananas as fruits anymore.
no?
They don't have a seed in them.
I think
the
they
whole
do.
purpose of them. Bananas don't have seeds in them anymore.
Little, no?
I had,
Anymore, they've been genetically modified not to have seeds.
okay, but if you genetically modify a cat so that it spits string like Spider-Man, it's still a cat.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You have to mutate it.
Yeah, I don't know, like,
Anyway.
this is getting into,
This is getting.
I heard that
cluster.
bananas are a berry, that they're actually technically a berry.
Well, I think, isn't it
Oh.
watermelon's technically a berry?
Yeah.
Tomatoes
Or-
are fruits,
and-
so the world's
and,
just us
um,
anyway.
Strawberries aren't actually, like, did you know, okay, strawberry facts, alright?
Is this gonna be on the test?
Yes. Did you know
It should
that
be
the
on the
fruit of the strawberry is actually the little seeds on the surface of the strawberry?
Yeah.
That the strawberry fruit itself is actually just a swollen stem, like the thing we, like, consider delicious?
That's interesting.
Yeah. But, anyway,
Programming going into.
that's okay, yeah, that's why people find the class delightful, because we have these little scientists. So,
No, it's fun. It actually
They
makes
do.
it fun.
yeah,
It
well,
says
you
so
know,
on Rate My
a
Professor.
certain, you know, a little nonsense now and then is treasured by the wisest men. So, anyway, so we wish to create a constructor, well, let's do it the stupid way, and then we'll see how the constructor is better, alright? So if we wanted to create a fruit, we would say fruit f is equal to new fruit. F, I'm just going to make these public for now. You will understand that, you know, if you want these to be private with methods, that's okay as well. But for now, we'll make them public. So, f.name, name me a fruit.
Apple.
Too boring, something
Kiwi.
else. Meh?
No.
Kiwi.
Kiwi, sure.
Dragon fruit.
Sorry, kiwi beat you to it. F.color. Interior or exterior color? Let's go for characteristic color, which would be green. F.weight. How much does a kiwi weigh? I would probably estimate around 80 grams. I could be wrong. And F dot is cluster. Kiwis are not a cluster fruit. So there we go. So this is the way that we've been using these things so far. Right? Let us add a constructor.
Excuse me.
Oh, question, yes?
If you leave the excess modifier like by default, like can't we still be excess in class?
I think probably if we just like take that off.
I think we can still access it.
Yes. It only gets locked if you say
Yeah.
private, but I believe if you leave it off, it's a third one that we don't really talk about, which is like an in-betweeny one called protected in Java, but we don't really have any slides on protected, so just everything's private to public, don't worry about it. So, let's write a constructor. Public, what's the next thing?
Fruit.
Fruit.
Fruit, that's right. Let's imagine we wish to instantiate all of these items. String name, string color, double weight, and Boolean is cluster. Now, we provide the contents. This dot name is equal to name. This dot color is equal to color. This dot weight is equal to weight. And this dot is cluster is equal to is cluster. Incidentally, in case you were wondering, a constructor of this form can be automatically generated using the generate function in IntelliJ. For example, if I wanted to generate a second constructor, initializing only name and color, that can be generated automatically. So far, so good. However, you may notice IntelliJ is complaining. It is complaining that we have one problem related to this constructor.
Oh, yeah.
The problem appears here.
Because it wants arguments now that you're not providing.
Precisely. It now wants arguments that previously it didn't take any arguments. Now it takes arguments. You have to change the constructor. So, we provide the information here. Kiwi, green, you can see it's auto-filling the names for me. Weight is 80, and false is cluster. This stuff now goes away. The lines are getting a little bit long, but you know. Now, if we wanted to, for example, print out f.name, there we have it. Kiwi. Any questions about any of that? Seems pretty straightforward? Good. So now, let's say, just out of interest, the name is locked down and we don't want any way to modify it. In fact, let's make all of these private. I am going to generate getters for all of these values very quickly. Alt insert, generate getter, all values, okay, bing bang boom. You still have to document them. Even if you generate them, you must still document them with Java doc, please. Additionally,
Can you repeat this part again, please?
sure, I can repeat that. Hold Alt, press Insert, select Getter, Enter, highlight all instance variables.
How do we highlight all of those together?
Oh,
Go down shift, use your mouse.
couple of different ways. So, if you're using keyboard, it's very easy. You hold Shift and you arrow down.
Okay.
If you're using mouse, there are a couple of different ways of doing it. Click on one entry, hold the Shift key, click on the final entry, right? And if you wish to select or deselect particular elements while the rest are highlighted, you hold Control. So if you hold the Control button, you can select or deselect particular items in the list. Question?
I just have max commands, just like added.
Sure. Oh, Max,
Command.
Mac is command instead of control for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a.
If you're on a Macintosh, use command instead of control.
You just put getters and setters. I wasn't.
I didn't add the setters,
Okay,
I
just
only
getters?
added the getters. I'm not going to actually add the full list of setters.
Okay.
So, here we have all our getters. So, I just want to throw one thing at you, which is like a slight naming difference that they make with Booleans. You'll notice everywhere else it's get color, get weight. In the case of Booleans, it's is cluster, right? So it uses it uses is instead of get for Booleans. So it's like, you know,
Is.
It already is.
I know, but it's annoying. If it was like just cluster, Boolean cluster,
Bit of a cluster.
which I know is, I'm making modifications and I shouldn't, this is dumb. Ah.
I like nouns, verb, variable
Yeah.
name.
Yes. So, there we go. If I regenerate this, I'll show you that it still calls it is cluster.
Is cluster what?
Basically, when it comes to Booleans, you're not getting a value, you're checking the state of something. Is this X? Yes or no? True or false? That's why it names it like that. So it's just a little bit different. Don't let that throw you off. Okay? I'm pretty sure setters are unchanged. Yes?
We did just getter because we had make a constructor, right? That's why we didn't make a setter.
Well, the reason I didn't make the setters is because I was going to only make 3 of them and not all 4 of them. Right? So, and that's also the reason I didn't generate both at the same time. So, here we go. Alt, insert, setter. I'm not picking name, I'm picking color, weight, and cluster. There we go. Color, weight, and cluster. So now, this must change to, oh my, I hate it. Get, name. You know what it is? It's like the mouse is on an inclined surface, so it like travels down when you set it down, which means it like mouses over the stupid news tab, which brings up the news and like, again, pictures of,
Which setter did you skip?
yeah, I hate it so much.
Which setter did you skip?
Which what did I skip?
Which
Oh,
setter?
name.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
I think he's gonna overload me.
Well, I was just going to demonstrate that, like, there's no way to modify it now. I wanted to reinforce that point. If you don't provide a setter for name,
It's always Kiwi.
it's not possible to say set name because the definition simply doesn't exist. And you can't set name through f.name equals blah because it's private. There's no way to access it. Right? It's now locked in for the duration of the existence of that object, unless one of the object's own methods decides to change it in some way. Like, for example, if we had like a timeout in here that like changed the name to rotten kiwi because it was on the shelf too long, you know, something like that maybe, sure, but in general, this guy doesn't get to decide when this changes. This guy decides when it changes. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool? All cool? Constructors? Yay yay? Rah rah? Question?
Off topic, you can turn off the hover on the news thing.
Really?
So if you right click it,
Right click.
go to news and interests, go to the top, and open on hover, turn that off.
Oh gosh.
You clicked the wrong one.
I clicked the wrong one here.
News and interests.
You turn off this click, right?
She doesn't let you.
We
Open
must,
on hover.
we must see
Turn off,
news
open
of
on hover.
Elon Musk.
His
Turn off.
face. Oh
Turn
yeah.
off, open.
Oh
There.
gosh. Well, it's not there anymore, so that might be.
Yeah, that works too.
Or
But here's the thing, right? That change isn't going to be saved. Every time, if I have to do that, I have to do that every time I teach a class.
That's gonna be unfortunate.
Precious seconds of my life that I never get back. Just disabling pictures of Americans' faces. Good Lord, I hate the cultural imperialism. So, anyway, yeah, good.
Word up.
Can you
Word.
scroll up the fruit class?
Sure, is that good?
Yeah.
So, next, we take our first tender steps into the delicate world of polymorphism. So,
That sounds immoral.
first, let us discuss the word polymorphism. Does anybody know enough Greek to know the root of the word polymorphism? Yes?
Do you mean like many forms?
It does. It means many forms. Poly meaning many, and forms meaning, well, morphos meaning shape, right? So it's many shapes, polymorphic. That's related to the term polyticks, which is many blood-sucking insects. Ha 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 ha. So, so the whole idea behind polymorphism is that a piece of code behaves differently depending on circumstance, depending on the ways in which it is interpreted. So, with, I actually skipped, we'll go back to default. So, you'll notice I declared two constructors with two different sets of arguments in our previous, and that wasn't a syntax error. It allowed me to do both of those. It turns out you are permitted to have as many constructors as you wish, providing they all have different arrangements of inputs, right? And when you use the constructor in Java, it will use whichever version corresponds to how it's been called, right? So if you write a constructor that takes one double, and you provide one double to the constructor, it executes this one. If you have another version which takes two doubles, and the constructor is called with two doubles, instead of one, it uses this one and not that one. If you have a constructor taking three whole doubles, and you use all of those doubles, it uses this definition. The most common usage of this in this course and in Java in general is that if you don't supply an argument, it provides a default value for it, right? So in the case of circle, if circle5 constructor is called with two doubles, nothing, it considers that to be x and y, it provides a default value for the radius, 10. Right? That is baked into the definition of this constructor, right? If you provide one double, it considers the location data to be missing, so it provides that in the constructor. And if no arguments are provided whatsoever, it considers that I need to provide default values for all of these instance variables, so it does so. That's how that's how this program is thinking about itself. Is this making sense so far? So I would like to take just a brief moment to talk about constructors of this form. Up to now, when you make a class and you leave out the constructor, you can still instantiate the class. Some form of constructor is still being provided, right? By default, the constructor which is provided, if you have not supplied one, takes no arguments and does nothing, but it still exists. As soon as you provide an argument, or as soon as you provide a constructor, Java removes that default constructor from you. That's why when we added the constructor to this fruit class, the constructor we were using, which was providing no arguments, became a syntax error. The default was no longer provided. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Good. So, if you want a constructor that takes no arguments, you have to put it back in, yourself manually. That's the point, right? This thing is provided by default in Java anytime you create a class and you've not provided a constructor. So, any questions on that point? Yes?
I just have a quick question in the code.
Oh, yeah, about the fruits.
Yeah.
What's your line number?
I don't like. I tried doing it, but I don't know where I messed up. I just had like 2, 3, something I messed up.
Well, I'm not sure I want to set a precedent for people coming up to me with a laptop during the class, so I'll talk to you after class
Okay.
about it, okay?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just be swarmed all the time, you know?
It's all fun and games until someone brings the monitor up. Can you look at this quick?
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose I didn't actually provide any time to walk around and fix people's problems, so I suppose, given that there are 6 minutes left in class, I will currently walk around and solve people's problems for them that they may have had with the previous exercise. Other than that, if you had no issues with that exercise, we will continue our discussion of these topics on Friday.
Okay.
Sound good? Any final questions before everybody breaks? I certainly will post this code to Canvas, yes. Was that your question as well? Yeah, okay, yeah. I absolutely will post the code, yes. Good. All right. Take her easy, folks.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what you want to tell us now, so I'm not sure.
When are you posting these?
As soon as it's graded. So I will be finishing that off this afternoon.
Alright.
Yeah, I now know what you said.
I'm putting it in modules.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh, that's.
Did you finish your assignment?
I did almost.
So how about the print out? I
That's,
still want to try.
that's,
So now sometimes so where you put your system out? In vending machine or in main?
In main. All my system outputs are in main. I never put anything. I don't really have any system outputs.
Okay. See you.
no, this is good. This is good. Yeah, you're using the constructor, so that's good. Oh.
It works pretty well.
Well, if you're going to model like a user wallet, that should probably be rather than the model, right? What, like, yeah, so, like, semantically, that's the user, right? The user is part of it. What is meant, like, for the user interaction, what's meant by, like, balance? You know, I put so many points in it.
I thought this was credit.
Yeah, that's, so balance is like, you know, cost minus, and that has to be
So right, the way I have it set right now, it only pulls the credit, but you can take more balance.
yeah, but if you're having balance, it should be, like, in that sense, if it's like monolith, the user's wallet, it should be the same for both machines, right? So yeah, but like the changes should be shared across the two. Another way of doing that is scatter filtering. That's again not quite what you need, right? But these are, let's just say these are aligned for the user. It seems top side.
Like if I submit a balance like that, do you want something else? Second one.
At the moment, it just looks like you have like a little bit of extra stuff.
A little bit. But also like I know string.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, actually, that's you want to use yeah. Well, you know, there's no reason you can't play other networks.
Oh, I can just index it in here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's already done.
Yeah. For the next one. Yeah, I do have a thing too. I don't know if there are people who are launching in, but how about you're actually physically on this computer, so I'll help you and I'll help the rest of you. Because I think we have to clear the room. Okay.
I just have a question about the test. C, the answer to C is independent of the answer to B. It's not,
No.
it's not wrong because B is wrong.
No.
Okay. Because we know B is wrong, you can't put a double in.
Yes. But even like, yeah, you don't have to worry about errors cascading.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Each is independent. Each question is independent of the other.
Precisely so.
So,
Yes.
can I put some like printout in the vending machine?
Yep.
So you, our classmate said we don't need to put printout in the vending machine. We should put printout or anything.
Oh wait, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired today. Yeah, no, any print statements should be here.
So no
Because-
any improvement in the object.
Okay,
Correct. Yeah, like this interaction, in theory, should be exactly the same for either vending machine. Right? So basically, this goes in here, you do a big switch case based on the input read, and you call the correct method on the correct machine based on what the user asked for.
So, so it's not correct for put this
Like if you
thing
have
like that.
a
From
private or a
I may
public
need add
method,
vending
it can
one,
access
vending two,
private
and set the
data.
attribute.
No, you only have one
try to
vending
access
machine
it
class,
outside
that's
of the
correct,
object
Yeah.
page,
right? But you have two objects, right?
So how can I put my main? Should I put main?
Main is in view, and it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
Use
you.
the main method in view. That's the point. That's how you do it. Yeah,
how many
vending
assignments in
machines
total?
have
How many assignments in total are there?
8.
Says add.
Men-
money,
So we could use
and then
a
have
late
a
A on every assignment and
argument
still have
that says this is the amount I wanna add.
some grades.
Make it
You
public.
have 2 days if you do that,
Yes.
yeah.
And within that method,
Yeah,
it
it's
says current
reasonably
amount,
generous.
this dot-
That's not bad.
Because you're
Yeah.
referring to the current amount in the object.
Okay.
Plus,
And
you
on the
go
other
or
side,
just
we can
add
do
the amount you wanna add. Well, change
Yeah,
the value.
well, actually, in this course, that's the policy in JavaScript,
Yeah,
but in this course, the policy is
This credit equals
you just
credit
get whatever.
trial.
When you run out, you run out.
But what
You can use
trial?
10 on the first one if you really want to, but I wouldn't recommend it.
as we are going, we get to know.
They are
We should save it for later.
They are a precious resource. Let me ask you a question. If you are playing The Legend of Zelda, do you use all of your bombs on the first
Okay,
room
so
of the
yeah, that
dungeon?
should work.
Yeah, that's why I never beat the
Yeah.
game.
Setting-
Yeah.
Adding.
Alright,
But I was
This
8.
dot credit,
Yeah.
and then you're using
guys, we do have to, there's another class
Is
coming in,
there,
so.
adding total amount.
But I'm gonna forget where I am.
You gotta be sure that you're adding the right number. to the
Alright,
right
That's
thing.
it, plus.
If you change
Yeah.
this file to this dot credit, it would add the credit amount that you're giving.
Your program done, James?
And now set it to
For the-
Assignment 2.
What did you say?
You close?
change trial to
I've started over 3 times.
Man, I,
He
Dude,
just
I
forgot his
have to-
camera.
Yeah, he's
That's
outside, I
not
think.
setting it for a second. That's adding to it.
that's bonus marks right there.
Yeah.
Just add to it. Yeah, so this is what you set it.
Sir, you forgot your camera.
Oh, thank you so
I
much.
didn't